We try to do these panels or these workshops maybe 3 to 4 times a year because we feel like it's really good content that we get in that a lot of nonprofits, city agencies, community organizations realize that the diversity is increasing a lot here in the area, and we need to do a better job and just be more effective at getting messages and information and making connections with diverse populations. And I think we're all aware of the demographics, but I think what really helps is when the experts or representatives from the different media can come and just give us kind of that firsthand, boots to the ground type of content that we really need. The thing I want to stress is that not only will we talk about today about strategies and kind of basics of just kind of media relations, publicity 101, but also we will get insight into various communities and what's going on in those communities, because we need to understand what the issues are and what's going on in those communities in order to really be able to effectively connect.
My name is Monica Feliu Mojer. I am the Vice Director and News Editor for Ciencia Puerto Rico, which is a nonprofit organization that uses social networking platforms, including social media, to connect and engage scientists with science education and communication initiatives. I'm also the manager of outreach programs at the Department of Biostatistics at the University of Washington. I will be talking mostly about the experiences I have with Ciencia Puerto Rico, because that's where most of the outreach I've been doing with the Hispanic community and Spanish-speaking community happens. So Ciencia Puerto Rico wants to create awareness about science, science careers, the importance of science amongst primarily Puerto Rican audiences, but really anyone that speaks Spanish. We're an online-based organization, so our hub is a website that is called cienciapr.org, so it's cienciapr.org, it's CIENCIAPR.org, and it's a fully bilingual website. And what we have done with this platform is a customized social networking platform that allows people to create professional profiles and become part of a community, which is free. And it's a community broadly defined for people interested in science in Puerto Rico. Not necessarily scientists, not necessarily Puerto Ricans, anyone that is interested in the community and in that broad topic can join.
And this is Love and Feelings, and this is the most popular program. Lots of people talking about their love stories, and really emotional and really interesting. And this is music program, and we have really almost all these hosts almost celebrities, because they are young, they are UW students, and they are singers themselves, and really, really nice. We host almost all majority performances in Chinese community in the Greater Seattle area. So our hosts are invited. So if this event is a performance major, important, our hosts are invited to host.
We've shifted things at KCTS now in that we actually are about to launch a new magazine program that's going to start in September. We're in the development stage, and that means that basically we're trying to figure out what it's going to be. And we do know this, that it's going to be a weekly current affairs program. It's going to be magazine style, and we're going to be telling stories. Our focus and our beat's going to be the Northwest. And we're looking for stories specifically, I would say, about people, issues, and culture, people of the Northwest. And we really, at least I want to be able to tell stories, in-depth stories, really looking at people and how issues affect people. Oftentimes, people approach us a lot, or I get a lot of pitches about stories, on immigration reform or politics or something happening in your community. And what I usually tell people, and I think it's important for all of you to make any pitch in any media that you want to try to get your attention, is how am I going to tell that story? And if it's an issue, I really want to tell that story through people that are affected by that issue. I want to tell a people story because it's really what is it's I think the best way to tell a story. I'll give you an example. Last year I produced a documentary called Latinos, The Changing Face of Washington. And it was a 1-hour documentary that looked at kind of the changing impact that Latinos are having here in the state, but also looked at our history. One of the, I did a variety of segments in that documentary, but one that I think worked really effectively was a story about a young woman who's a dreamer. Dreamers are, the young people that have been brought to this country by their parents. They do not have documentation. They generally find out when they're a bit older, and in this case, this was a young woman who was from Quincy, Washington, and she came here when she was 11 years old. She didn't really know that she didn't have papers until she got into high school. She was a really good student, had a scholarship opportunity to go to the University of Washington through Gear Up, and had like a $9,000 scholarship, and then she couldn't take it because she didn't have documentation, and she can't take any federal loans, and that still exists today, even though you may have recently heard that on the state level they passed this Real Hope Act. So young people like her can apply for state aid, but so the story there was really about her because she represented what that issue is all about. And she was also a young woman that had come to this country without speaking the language at all, but yet was a really good student and had gone through a lot of adversity to get to where she's at now. She's actually studying to be a nurse. She's doing quite well. She goes to Big Bend Community College and is involved in a nursing program that's also connected to the University of Washington. But she still has those issues regarding finances and money. But that's how we were able to tell that story, because I could personalize it, and then I could also give you the context of the whole issue of immigration reform, that a fight over that, and also the issues of the fact that there are so many thousands of young people like her that are out there hoping for an opportunity, because many of these young people are very, very bright. They just need that opportunity. So when I'm telling a story, I really want to have a people connection to be able to tell that story, because it tends to be much more gripping. It really explains the issues around a story. And it also helps me then get to the issues of what that story is all about.
I represent Northwest Asian Weekly. It's a pan-Asian English language newspaper based in Seattle's Chinatown. It is 32 years old. It's an award-winning paper. It wins like maybe a dozen awards from the Society of Professional Journalists and the Washington Newspaper Publishers Association each year, and that's on editorial content alone. So we're very proud of the paper. It's a big deal, especially within the pan-Asian community. These days, a print publication does not exist by itself. So we do have a very robust social arm. We have a very strong web presence. We get about 2,000, 3,000 visitors a day. We have a readership of about 35,000 each week. And then we're distributed all across the greater Seattle area and the Puget Sound region, a little bit in eastern Washington, but mostly in this area. We are lacking for news from the east side, though, because we're based in Seattle. So it's really, really amazing to talk to you all and to see you all today. So hopefully, you'll pitch to us, too. You will be able to find the contact information in the newspaper or going to our website. So a little bit about the Asian community is that it's actually a very, very large community. I believe in the 2000 census, people of color comprised of about 25% of Seattle's population. In the 2010 census, now it's about a third. So that's a huge, huge growth. There used to be a time when the newspaper was first conceived that, this community was seen as a fringe community, but it's such a different story now, 32 years later. Now our readership runs the gamut. Half of our readership is actually non-Asians, and then the other half is Asians. So it's a very diverse readership, and it's also about a very diverse community. It's a community that is very educated, fairly liberal, so very politically active, but then it's also a community that struggles with its gap, many gaps. It struggles with cultural gaps, struggles with language gaps, and that's what our newspaper aims to kind of create a bridge between the different pain points to kind of alleviate the pains. And I guess in terms of pitching to different publications, people who work at these publications are completely overextended. They are really tired, they're working long hours, they're not getting paid very much, so they sometimes have a hard time keeping their attention on things. So you have to work a little bit harder with them to get their attention. And they really want you to understand who they are, what their identity is. So it's very important for you to do a fair amount of research before you pitch to publications. So Seattle Weekly will have a completely different identity from The Stranger, and that's obvious. And you know what each paper is about. It's the same with these hyper-local community papers, community blogs. They all have a distinct point of view. They all have an identity that they're really proud of. If you kind of put a little effort toward knowing what they are about, and you pitch a story that relates to that, that speaks to that, and even if it's not like 100% of the way there, people can tell that you're making an effort, and they will help you out the rest of the way.
Anytime we have a press conference or statement that's being made, we don't rely on mainstream media to pick up our event. We promote our stuff. Because one thing about social media, you don't have to worry about things being edited out or something mentioned that has no relevance. And sometimes folks don't really understand in mainstream media, and they might see and miss the complete point that you're trying to make. So I think it's essential that social media, we all use social media, because in that way, whatever you're saying is going to be communicated verbatim, as opposed to relying on someone else to interpret your statement or your position for you.
Fairly new to Seattle, but that's something that I've been